The United States finally reopening its economy gradually, just to be facing mass protests. How bad is the situation?
Well, it really seems like civil unrest boiled over this weekend, far more sort of in much more places than we've seen in years gone by. Ferguson and Baltimore were quite localized, and this is really, dozens, even over 100 cities, small and large, have seen these protests. And it's overlaid, as you say, against the coronavirus shutdowns, and people have been very tense and on edge, and things have really boiled over. And time and again, we see that there's been peaceful protests that have suddenly turned violent, and there's some kind of trigger in there. We don't exactly know what it is, but setting fire to cars and looting and stealing from stores, it's all kind of happening, and really something that's unnerved the country in a way we haven't seen for a long time.
Rose, of course, there's been criticism that what we have heard from the president has really just added fuel to the fire. What are we expecting the next moves to be from the administration?
Yes, we certainly have heard some criticism from our big city mayors and others of Trump's inflammatory rhetoric on Twitter and some of his actual speeches. It's possible that the president will give some kind of speech from the Oval Office to try to diffuse the situation, or to really take a close look at race relations in the United States. But it's unclear whether he actually will do that. And some mayors, like the mayor of Washington, D.C., probably would hope that he doesn't do it. At the moment, Trump is very much focused on the law and order aspect of all of this. You might have seen that he tweeted just about 20 minutes ago those very words, law and order. He gave a very stern speech in Florida on Saturday about how we're not going to let mobs and riots take over. And today he took action via the Justice Department to classify Antifa, which is sort of a loose affiliation of anti-fascist protesters, as a terrorist organization. Well, he actually can't do that, and Antifa doesn't really exist as a complete entity. It's sort of a diffuse group of people, but he's really taking quite a hard line, and this really returns Trump to the themes of his 2016 convention speech and his inauguration speech of a dark and dangerous America. So really, for President Trump, this could be what he sees in his mind as a win from this situation by focusing on law and order and having the spotlight taken away from the coronavirus pandemic.
And President Trump also focusing on what he calls, on a tweet this weekend, liberal U.S. governors and mayors getting tougher on protesters, or else the federal government would step in. So what are we seeing in terms of divisions within the American public and American society at large?
Right. Well, the Americans at the moment have been very split along partisan lines for a long time, and it's kind of easy. It's an easy target, I would say, excuse me, for President Trump to look at big city mayors who are almost inevitably Democrat, governors like the governor of Minnesota and certain other states, and to say they're weak on crime and they're just weak. And he's talked about the possibility of sending in the U.S. military to straighten things out. He really can't do that at this point. But the National Guard is operating in something like 15 states at the moment, 5,000 troops with more on hand. And for the most part, they're not armed. They're really there to supplement law enforcement. But it's really a very volatile situation.
And Ros, we're continuing to hear from major cities announcing these curfews, right? LA, just the latest, saying that LA County curfew will take place from 6 p.m. on Sunday until 6 a.m. on Monday morning. We're hearing reports of train and rail services being ceased in Chicago for that same reason as well. How much of a dampener is this when it comes to the U.S. consumer, as well as just the logistics of these businesses, particularly services and consumer-facing businesses that are just starting to maybe think about going back to normal.
Yes, absolutely true. We've heard reports this weekend about Apple closing a number of stores, Target closing a number of stores, really right across the country. And these are retail outlets that really only just started to reopen in many cases after the coronavirus. Some of them are still subject to social distancing procedures, so they can only have a limited amount of people in the store. So between that and looting and protests, it just seems like the safest thing for now is just to close them down. As you say, in Chicago, the public transport has been shut overnight, and it's very interesting because it's not just downtown. I've had reports of some of the suburbs of Chicago seeing looting and unrest. So it's really quite a big situation. I mean, the best we can hope is that it blows over soon. But I think you're seeing in the stock market and elsewhere that people don't like uncertainty, and that's what they're seeing now.